Namaste. I have a good laugh. I'm a funny guy. I'm entertaining to myself, if not to anybody else. Yesterday I wrapped it up. I was done. Embracing silence. I'm looking forward to being silent. Nothing left to say, yet here I am today. Didn't take long. Well, the universe has a very, very strange way of letting me know. Letting me know. What's what? It's not about my decisions. Just, there it is, right from my face. And I thought I had silence. I remember silencing the mind and then, rediscovering my purpose was to find my purpose. And that was the whole thing about Zen, was to discover my purpose. Well, which ironically, I knew since birth. I knew my purpose was to reunite, to remember the forgotten, and embrace it and live in the oneness and the love and the universality and the sameness and the ordinariness, and to embrace ordinariness and to learn to forgive and forget. Lots of lessons along the way that took me to full circle. Well, here I come with silence. I think now I'm ready to be quiet. Okay? I'm done. Embracing silence, my last YouTube video. Now I have to go back and do the closed caption for 400 videos. I did yesterday's, or the last one I did a couple days ago. I guess it's been a couple days already. I finished the closed caption right away. But it was only 20 minutes long. Most of my talks have traditionally been 33 minutes, which was my go-to number. My lucky number still is my lucky number. But let's take a look at how the universe, what happens? The second I think I have a clue, I have a grasp, I have a grip on what's next and what to do, and I finally get to shut up and be silent, all of a sudden I have to take a new look at silence. And of course it would come through one of my most prized and revered and honored saint, Thich Nhat Hanh, from Plum Village, the Vietnamese monk that died 94 or something, just died this past year. 2022, I think he passed on. But as my eyesight has gotten worse, I've taken more and more to this device. Okay. Read it on my...
Last night, Grizzlies at one point, they were up by 17.
6. Mini 6. And let me go back here. I've been listening to, the ebooks and the audiobooks. And last night I found Silence. That's just the name. Silence by that not home. That Thich Nhat Hanh. The Vietnamese monk, Plum Village in France. He was all about bhakti yoga, the yoga of compassion. He was the epitome, the ultimate expression of. It taught me about walking. Really, I trained in Zen walk, but I'd never felt the earth. I'd never been as aware of the earth and the connection as I became by listening to him. And I've just been following forever and just love him. And he was ready to go, and I think he stayed just for us for as long as he could. He really hung in there. But here I go, silence. I thought, aha, silence, and I just embraced silence. And the first thing he does is introduce the complexities of silence. He starts off by saying, like I thought that silence in the mind was the absence of thought. And so silence What is silence? It's the absence of sound, right? Simple. And then I thought, I was thinking through the logistics of it. It's okay, I'm going to take my vow of silence. I spent a year in silence 20 years ago. Loved it. Didn't talk for a whole year, but I was fortunate enough I had created the right environment, lived in the fern forest on the Big Island up in Hawaiian Village on the slopes of Haleakala, and was able to take care of my needs, go shopping down at the bottom of the hill, go to the grocery store, didn't have to talk. The Big Island, Hawaii is not my home. I grew up in Oahu, so I didn't have a lot of guests, and I borrowed somebody. Somebody just asked me if I sit on their little trailer. And the trailer had a stack of wood, a year's worth of wood, and I would burn fire and experimented with growing anthuriums and had a great year of silence. And then what I found pretty remarkably, I didn't miss talking at all. And I said verbose, verbose means blah, 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 talk too much. I'm famous for talking too much. Infamous. Anyway, year of silence, and it got easier and easier. And it was really hard to start talking again. Very, very difficult. I'm going to adjust this just a little bit because I want to see my three Buddhas in the background. Hello, guys. How's that? I'll come up here a little closer because I like feeling the screen. I don't know if you can see my... Anyway, what is Thich Nhat Hanh talk about? He immediately talks about 5 kinds of silence. And they're also remarkable, but I'll talk about 2 today because I want you to get his book. I want you to get his book and listen to him talk about silence. He does a much better job than I do. And I don't want to steal his thunder. And in just a second, you'll get the irony of stealing his thunder, because one of the silences he talks about is thunderous silence. Now, how do you get your head around that? Thunderous silence. But he gave an example. If you grew up near a waterfall, or, and you were any flora or fauna or animal or whatever, any expression of life, and you grew up but by a continually running water, a waterfall. And those of you that we have some beautiful ones in Hawaii, and there's all around there's some nice ones in Taiwan. And thunderous is a really good word because it's making so much noise that's all you can hear. And thunderous has become synonymous with just a loud word. So he talked about thundering silence. He said, imagine if you grew up next to this thunderous sound of running water, of the waterfall. And you were in silence, you were practicing silence. Your silence would be predicated on that sound. Part and parcel. Now, what if that sound stopped? He suggests, and I would concur, that you might feel a little bit lost, to put it minimal, because this is your expectancy. This is life as you see it, and as we see life is how we think we know life. Life appears to be based on our senses, and we learn better, but it's a long life lesson. So this thunderous silence, okay, now that's one. And he talked about emotional and cognitive, and he talked about different kinds of silences, and that they were unique. And again, I don't want to steal his thunder, except the concept of thundering silence. I'm naming this video, by the way. I'm supposed to say this in the first 10 seconds, and I didn't do it again. Simon and Garfunkel, Sound of Silence. So that's a perfect, because I had assumed again. Assume means make ass of you and me, right? Ass of you and me, if you get assume. ASSUME. The assumptions will get you in deep doo-doo. But anyway, silence obviously was the absence of sound. And here he points out 5. And I'm just going to talk about 2. And I've done talking about thunderous silence, which I have to admit is the most intriguing one. 4b, the absence of sound. In fact, if that waterfall ever stopped, then you would be in deep. What to do? If your whole life had been the experience of this thunderous silence, and all of a sudden the thunderous, the noise, the waterfall, the water dried up, well, now what? Pretty apocalyptic, huh? The end of the world as you know it, for sure. And then the other silence that he talked about is the one that prompted me to talk some more about this video I'm doing. Embracing silence, done, finished, I told you. And felt kind of good. And then bingo! In fact, I had lain down and picked up my iPad mini, and stumbled across this book and immediately started listening to it, and just enthralled. And I went to sleep by it, and I got up this morning and continued. And as I look at you right now, I couldn't tell you the other 3 silences. Something to do with anyway, that's his trip. And I'll leave him to it because he's much better purveyor of his own words of wisdom than I certainly would ever claim to be. And I'm sorry that I got lost in the footsteps, got lost in his relationship to the world, the birds and the bees, and his silence that he talked about, which was full, the touch of the earth on your feet, the communion with life. Talked about events in their Plum Village where they would sit in concentric circles. And someday, I've never gone into my vision of a healing center that had to do with concentric circles, with a fountain, spring in the middle. From the spring came the circles. And the circles metaphor came, my brother and I sitting by a beautiful pond, and I remember throwing a rock. And the circles, just the concentric circles, and they expanded past the shore. And I was quite certain that the consequences of throwing that rock in the water meant that this continuation of ever-increasing circles would go for infinity. And then I realized that just so the rock in the water, what about an angry word? What about a vicious thought? What about a vindictive plot? Or what about love? Toss love in the pond, and the concentric circles would be love. And this is all leading me back to where I am right this minute as I'm sitting looking at you, is that, oh no, the second way I was going to talk about sound. And it had to do with the circles, that he would be first and he would sit in the center. He would be where the stone would go in. He would be the origin of the energy that would create the concentric circles. The stone. But remember, a stone just doesn't generate something. That's the fun part. Something had to put him in the midst of this. Some other agency. actually transmitted. He was just a transmitter of the energy. Okay, and people would come and sit around him, and they did this at meal times in particular. But they had practiced this meditation, but they continued it to meal times. So they had gone through a period of time with him, a retreat, where they practiced this kind of meditative concentric circles, each surrounding the other. Transmission, generally from inward to outward, right? Whatever would come back would be a little important and actually would meet resistance, but there's nothing much out there that can really add to what's in here, right? Just can't compete, because this is the origin of everything. Concentric is the center of the stone, the dot in the middle of the circle. So at mealtimes, he would go and sit and he would just enjoy 15, 20 minutes of silence. And this is the silence that I was alluding to yesterday, and embracing silence. No talking, just enjoying the sound, just enjoying life. Just enjoying the sounds. People would go and get their meals and as quietly as possible bring their food and sit around him. And probably at some point, he probably had a minder. I'm looking for a minder too. Somebody looked after him, because after you get to a certain point in life, you need some help. And I think spiritually, that most Buddha had his Ananda, who waited his turn. It was like the third or the fourth, probably the third in the patriarchy, the third Buddha. But he waited his turn. But it was a lifelong servant and a secretary. And, I have YouTubes. Fortunately, I don't need a secretary to write this down. I'm fortunate enough to have this tool of YouTube. But I can feel that I'm looking for my minder. Hello. Any minders out there? Any volunteers? Need a minder. And I really like the feminine energy. Doesn't have to be particularly young, but it has to be vital. And, a mother's care. Not exactly a mother, because the relationship between guru and minder is different. The minder is someone that's sacrificed their life to see into the needs. Because, we get forgetful. I've already been practicing forgetfulness as long as I can remember. So it's obvious that, as you sow, so shall you reap. So not all the rewards of surrendering are applicable to the necessary skills you have in this life just to survive. So a minder, a reminder. So one of his minders, one of his minions, one of his admirers, I like that, would bring his food. And at first it was, there was the noise of the people getting their food, and we're talking about mindfulness, and so they were trying to eat mindfully, but there became a time when, conversation just naturally occurs. And much to my surprise, Thich Nhat Hanh, he called this a silence. Mindful silence. That there's a time for words, and there's a need for words, as long as you're in a form. And I was kind of stuck at this conundrum yesterday, like, okay, I'm going to be quiet, but what happens next? Seems like a big leap of faith, but here's a silence. Thank you. Here's a silence one of the categories of silence that would include, or at least not preclude, the need to communicate, at least to get your basic needs fulfilled. And there's a human need for companionship and friendship and sharing. But just as we live and breathe mindfully, we break silence. We use words. We speak mindfully, softly, encouragingly, kindly, soulfully. So here now, thank you, I have my silence. That doesn't mean I have to shut up. Funny how my mind is extremes, you know. So I'm entering in the phase of mindful silence, which fits so seamlessly with where I was going. You know, it answered my own immediate problems that I saw with this concept of silence being the absence of sounds. The words disappear. No, words are no longer useful. Didn't need words. Well, as long as I'm in this body, I need words. So there I was. I sat there yesterday. I said, "Oh, that felt good. Felt good. Let's get these all. Let's get these closed captions tightened up. Might take the next year. Probably will take more than a year to get them all in order." But it's good. It's fun for me to re-listen. And, you know, I do go back and re-listen to my 400 videos. And I have to say that the ones I started at the beginning are just as meaningful and just as useful to me and to whoever can find usefulness therein. Nothing much has changed. The same lack of sophisticated equipment, editing, not interested in editing. But here we go. So all I can say is thank you. Not done yet. Let's see. Let's see what I learned tonight. Let's see how the Spirit moves me. Let's see how I'll follow up on sounds of silence. Namaste. And I just have to leave this a little differently. I'm just overwhelmed with love. So my part of my practice, listening, 2 ears, 1 mouth, right? And understanding silence, utilizing living silence while existing, sharing, blessing, and most of all, loving. Thank you. Namaste.